Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So for those of you that don't know me, again, I'm Jacob Van Sickle. I'm Executive Director at Bike Cleveland. And I'm going to talk with you a little bit today about our work towards building a culture for active transportation to improve community health. For those of you that aren't familiar with Bike Cleveland, our mission is really to build livable communities by promoting all forms of cycling and advocating for the rights and equality of the cycling community. A little sidebar, that mission may be tweaking a little bit. We're actually doing our own strategic planning process currently this year. So we may be kind of expanding that mission a little bit to include also pedestrian interests, knowing that a lot of our work that we do doesn't just benefit those that bike, but also benefits people on foot as well. Originally, we were formed at the request of city, county, and foundation leaders who at the time, in 2009, were doing a lot of planning processes for road designs and trying to incorporate things like bike lanes. But when they went to the community pushed back and said, we just want as many travel lanes as possible. So those entities actually pulled together the existing bike advocacy groups and said, what can we do to get you guys to really mobilize a base of supporters that can speak up for making our streets more complete, which then led to the formation of Bike Cleveland. We currently have 3 paid staff members, a 15-member board of directors, and over 1,000 dues-paying members. And you can see on this map here, it's not just Cleveland, but it's all over the county and actually in neighboring counties as well. So I'm going to start by talking with you guys a little bit about the problem. For the past 75 years, across the United States, we've really built up this culture that's built around the automobile. Wide roads, fast cars, and really creating a lack of safe alternatives for people that might want to bike or walk or access public transit. And that result is really, a landscape that's difficult and unsafe for people to bike and walk. And hitting on that equity lens, there was a report put out by the League of American Bicyclists and the Sierra Club that actually found these unsafe environments disproportionately affect people of color, knowing that in many neighborhoods, thinking of Cleveland, think of roads like Superior, St. Clair, Buckeye, East 93rd. Those roads are really designed to get people in and out of the neighborhood as possible. And those are also neighborhoods that are highly minority populations. And those populations are being disproportionately impacted safety-wise. So there's higher crashes. You're more likely, 3 times higher to be killed walking or biking if you're black than you are somebody that looks like me. But this wasn't always the plan. Back in 1974, in California, they were developing guides that looked like a lot of the new guides we're developing today for designing bike facilities. Things like protected bike lanes, where there's physical separation between a bike lane and the automobile lane. But that idea was, there was a lot of pushback around that idea, and this movement called vehicular cycling was really built. And what the vehicular cycling movement is really built around is if we educate people to operate a bicycle like they would an automobile, then they can ride and share the road with traffic and everybody will just get along. And I think history has proven that wrong. We're in an era across the United States where we're still really built up around the car, and mode share of driving is very much higher than the mode share of people who are biking and walking. So there's actually movement to change that. But really, active transportation is a way to kind of heal what's ailing us. Think of obesity, think of diabetes, think of heart disease. A lot of those are symptoms of lack of physical activity. But there is a desire. There are studies, one put out by Jennifer Dill, one of the key researchers around active transportation, that found that 56% of the population want to bike, but they just don't feel safe doing so. They can't leave their house, hop on a bike, and get to work, or get to the grocery store, or get to school safely. And the 2015 study by the Urban Land Institute found that 52% of Americans want to live in a place where they can in a city where they can walk. And how are we doing this? How is Bike Cleveland really trying to shift that narrative? And I'll be honest with you, this narrative is also happening across the United States. I mentioned those guides from 1974 in California. A lot of the basic principles of those guides are actually being incorporated into new guides from Federal Highway Administration and US DOT to really prioritize stress-free bike facilities that will get more people out riding. And we're hopefully trying to ride that wave, and our goal is really advocacy and street design is pushing our civic leaders to adopt those guidelines and implement them so that we can reap the benefits. So the work we do is really around advocacy and street design and policy, education and encouragement, and I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into those three fields. So I mentioned Bike Cleveland. We officially started in 2011. That's when we did our first strategic planning summit. I was hired in 2012, and since that time we've advocated for about 70 new miles of bike facilities across the city of Cleveland. This is a lot of the low-hanging fruit, as you guys mentioned earlier, streets that are already overly wide, that a lane can be taken away. So starting 2017, 2018 and on, we're really starting to look at, we have this network that may or may not be connected, pieces here and pieces there. What can we do to really connect the network? We worked with our friends at Rails to Trails Conservancy, a national nonprofit that focuses on trail building and active transportation, and partners at the City of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County actually recently to develop a tool called Bikeable that looks at our existing bike network and our planned future bike network and identifies how connected it is based on different analysis. So one of the analysis we were able to run, and we can really run this anyway, this is just an example, is how connected via a stress-free bikeway are low-income households to job-rich centers or low-income households to grocery stores. And what that found actually in terms of low-income populations to job-rich centers is in our existing scenario of our bike network, 18% of the population are connected. If we were to build out our full network, every single plan that exists in the city of Cleveland to build our network, 36% of low-income populations would be connected to a job-rich center. So that type of tool is what we're going to be using and working with the city of Cleveland in terms of helping prioritize and implement future bike facility plans as well. So a lot of the things you see built out there now look like this, Sometimes there's just a 6-inch stripe separating somebody from a motor vehicle. Sometimes there's a little bit more with some transverse lines. But what we're really advocating for is this, something where there's actual physical separation. So you can see up here in the top right, that's the future opportunity corridor with a multi-purpose trail next to it. You can see the improvements here on the Troitsburger Bridge where they actually took a lane of traffic headed into downtown, created some physical separation, put up some dedicated lights at the intersections to get bicyclists through the intersections, and it's much safer, much more comfortable. I use my wife as an example a lot. She'll come out with me and the kids out on the trails to ride a bike, but she'll never get on a bike to ride to work because she doesn't want to mix with traffic. So it's really about designing our streets and building a bike network that really serves all users and all abilities. We also kind of help create greater access to bicycles. So we worked with Cuyahoga County Department of Sustainability to launch the bike share system, UH Bikes you see downtown University Circle. And we're working with them to actually expand that even further, not just in Cleveland, into more Cleveland neighborhoods, but hopefully county-wide and some of the other inner ring suburbs as well. We also work with local businesses and organizations to get bike racks and things called bike fix-it stands. So this fix-it stand, this orange thing in the middle, it's basically a repair stand that has tools and a pump for people to utilize to fix their bikes. Specifically these ones, we installed 5 in the central neighborhood in Cleveland. After we did a needs assessment with residents that found, people want to ride their bikes in the central neighborhood, but they don't have access to cheap air to pump up their tires to be able to ride their bike. So we worked with folks at the Boys and Girls Club and at the Carolines to install racks and these fix-it stands with pumps that residents can go and keep their bikes in working order and pump up their tires. In terms of policy, we work primarily with the City of Cleveland to pass policy. Right before I was hired at Bike Cleveland, we worked with the city to adopt a complete and green streets ordinance, which is one of the pieces that helped lead to that increase in bike facilities over the past 4 or 5 years. We're also working with City Council and the City Administration right now on a policy called Vision Zero, which is it's a national trend, but we're hoping not just to make it a trend here in Cleveland. We're hoping it leads to action. But it's this idea where a city commits to having 0 fatalities among all road users, bike, cars, pedestrians, by a set date and then develop a plan to get there. A lot of that encompasses, street design and education and encouragement programs, but we're kind of in the beginning stages of what that might look like and actually what the goal is. We also worked statewide to pass a 3-foot passing law. So those of you that aren't aware what that is, when you're on the road and you're passing a bicycle, legally you have to give them 3 feet of space on the road. It's difficult to enforce, so we do a lot of public awareness around that law. And we also have a device that we purchased that we loan out to local police departments that actually measures the distance somebody passes a bicycle. So a lot of our police departments now have bike units or police officers on bikes. We loan it out to them and they can take it out and use it and use that to do some public awareness around the law. Education-wise, we've learned that there's no better way to get what we want than to get civic leaders out on bicycles. Nothing like experiencing what somebody on a bike experiences every day. So we've done a good number of civic leader rides and council member rides where we actually put them on a bike, ride through their ward in areas where there have been improvements made and it feels comfortable, areas where there have been missed opportunities, and areas where people may have to ride to get out of the neighborhood to a job, but it's pretty harrowing. We also do Safe Routes to School programming with CMSD schools. We started this year a program with the Cleveland Department of Aging called Silver Spokes, sponsored by AARP, where we brought senior accessible bikes out to recreation centers and did some senior education and actually got them out on the bike so they could kind of relive that joy of biking when maybe they were little. And then in terms of encouragement, for us it's really about building this culture and connecting people to each other. Those of you that may do rides, group rides like Slow Roll or Cleveland Critical Mass in Cleveland, it's really about bringing people together on a bike and building those relationships. And what we found is, the more we're getting people out in group settings riding bikes, the more likely they are then to hop on the bike on their own, maybe on the weekends, or hop on the bike to get to work, because it gives them that comfort and gives them that community to really rally around. So we do also light distribution programs, and this was funded over the past 4 years by Center for Disease Control REACH grant, where we actually equip volunteers at night with lights, and they ride around and give them out to folks who are riding without them and talk with them about riding their bike safely. Things like Cranksgiving, which is this weekend in Euclid, where cyclists gather at the Euclid Hunger Center and ride their bikes around to grocery stores, purchase food, and then we donate it to the Euclid Hunger Center. Things like that where the cycling community is giving back, but we're also encouraging people to do things by bike. One of the cool things about Cranksgiving is when somebody pulls up to a grocery store on a bike and they load their bags up with groceries. People are always amazed that you can actually go grocery shopping by bike. So, yeah. But ultimately, in the end, in this culture shift for us, it's really about building up our environments for the next generation. Folks like these, my son here on his bike at one of the Open Streets events in Cleveland, this little girl who was out walking on National Walk to School Day, and these kids here at a rodeo in Fullerton in Slavic Village. These are the kids we really want to build up a safe environment so they can have a choice. If they want to own a car, which statistically showing more and more 16 to 18-year-olds aren't driving, they aren't getting their driver's license. But do we want to give them a choice to be able to bike or walk safely? So that's all I got. I can take any questions if you guys would like. Other than that, thanks for your time. Yeah. I don't know if they wanted to have a microphone or not. I can repeat the question.
Do you do anything with indoor biking? I'm just thinking of the long winter time frame that we have here in Cleveland, and I'm just curious if there are things like that.
Yeah, we do. In terms of riding, so with schools, schools don't meet in the summer, so we do a lot of programming outside in the summer. But when we do a lot of programming with school, it happens in like the gymnasiums. We also do a lot of education programs over the winter, which aren't necessarily riding, but they're more talking with folks about, here's how you can pick the right bike, here's how you put your helmet on, here are the laws and how you can ride safely. So yeah, there are some indoor things as well. And some of those programs too aren't just geared towards cyclists either. We have a bicycle-friendly motorist program that we've been taking around to some of the driver education schools, where we're talking with potential and future drivers on how to drive around people riding bikes safely as well. Dan?
I have a question that I was going to ask you on the side, but might be good for you.
Yeah,
Is there a place where I can donate old bikes?
I get this question a lot, yeah. There is a place you can donate old bikes. The best option is probably the Ohio City Bicycle Co-op down in the Flats, 1840 Columbus Road. So we partner with them on a lot of our youth programming. They take donated bikes, fix them up, and then we give them away at various Safe Routes to School programs, or use them as rentals for our rides with civic leaders and council members. Yeah. Any other questions? Cool. Thanks, everybody.